The island had a library of dead crews. She became the first to write a survival story. When Maya Chen looked up from her navigation charts and saw the wall of black clouds racing toward them at impossible speed, she had exactly 4 minutes to save everyone on board. 4 minutes before the storm that meteorologists would later call the anomaly slammed into their research vessel with the force of a freight train made of wind and fury. Welcome to Heartfire Obsession. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Maya wasn't supposed to be the one in charge. She was the junior oceanographer. The quiet one who everyone assumed was just there to take water samples and run errands. The real captain, Director Hartwell, had dismissed her weather warnings 2 hours earlier with a condescending pat on the shoulder. "Sweetie," he'd said, "I've been sailing these waters for 20 years. That little squall is nothing." Now Hartwell was below deck, passed out drunk in his cabin, and that little squall was about to tear their ship apart. The vessel's fatal flaw. The Meridian Explorer wasn't built for storms. It was a research vessel designed for calm waters and controlled studies, funded by a tech billionaire who cared more about viral documentaries than actual science. The crew of 12 included marine biologists, a documentary filmmaker, 3 college interns who'd won a contest, and Maya, the only person on board who'd grown up sailing fishing boats through typhoons off the Philippine coast with her grandfather. She'd noticed the atmospheric pressure drop an hour before the clouds appeared. She'd seen the unusual wave patterns, the way the seabirds had vanished from the sky, the odd metallic taste in the air that her grandfather had taught her meant danger. But when she'd tried to warn Hartwell, he'd laughed. The interns had smirked. Even her fellow scientists had exchanged looks that said, "There she goes again, being paranoid." Now the first blast of wind hit the ship like a punch from God himself. Seconds to decide. All hands on deck. Maya's voice cut through the chaos, louder and more commanding than anyone had ever heard her speak. "Secure everything. Now." People stumbled from below, confused, some still holding coffee cups. The documentary filmmaker, Brandon, had his camera out, thinking this would make great footage. He didn't understand yet that footage doesn't matter when you're drowning. Maya moved like someone possessed. She'd already strapped on her life vest and was throwing others at people as they emerged. "Put these on. Don't argue. Jake." She grabbed one of the interns by his shirt. "Get to the radio room and broadcast our position." "Sarah, help me secure the equipment." "Who put you in charge?" Jake stammered, but the look in Maya's eyes stopped him cold. "The person who's going to keep you alive. Move." The ship lurched violently to the left. A massive wave crashed over the bow, sending water cascading across the deck. Equipment that hadn't been secured went sliding, crashing into rails, into people. Someone screamed. And that's when Maya saw it, through the sheets of rain that had started falling like bullets, a shape that shouldn't exist. An island, but not on any chart, not on any map, not on any satellite image she'd ever studied. It was directly in their path. The impossible island. "Turn the ship." Maya sprinted toward the bridge, but the second blast of wind hit before she could reach it. The Meridian Explorer tilted at a 45-degree angle. Everything not tied down became a missile. Maya slammed into the rail, felt a rib crack, tasted blood. Through the pain, she saw the island growing larger. It was wrong. Everything about it was wrong. The rocks were too sharp, too uniform, almost like teeth. The vegetation was too dark, too thick. And there was something else. Structures. Buildings? Impossible. This area had been surveyed dozens of times. "We're going to hit," someone shouted. Maya pulled herself up, ignoring the fire in her side. The bridge door was jammed. She could see through the window. Empty. No one at the helm. Hartwell must have set the autopilot before going below, And now the computer was driving them straight into those jagged rocks. She had maybe 90 seconds. The choice no one else would make. Maya didn't hesitate. She grabbed a fire axe from the emergency locker, swung it through the bridge window, and dove through the broken glass. Shards ripped through her jacket, her arms, but she didn't stop. She reached the manual override and yanked the wheel hard to starboard. The ship groaned like a dying whale. Metal shrieked. For a terrible moment, Maya thought the rudder had snapped. Then, slowly, agonizingly, the Meridian Explorer began to turn, but not fast enough. The port side scraped along the island's rocky shore with a sound like the world ending. The impact threw Maya across the bridge. She hit the navigation console, heard something else crack inside her body, and watched in horror as the ship's hull tore open like paper. Water rushed in. The ship was sinking, and they were stuck on an island that didn't exist. The sinking ship's secret. Abandoned ship. Maya's voice barely worked anymore, but she forced the words out. Life rafts. Now, people were screaming, crying, praying. The documentary filmmaker was still filming. At least he'd be useful for something if they survived. The ship was listing badly now, tilting toward the gash in the hull. They had minutes, maybe less. Maya helped deploy the life rafts, practically throwing the interns into them. The other scientists followed, some in shock, some surprisingly calm. She counted heads. 11. Someone was missing. Hartwell. Leave him. Sarah shouted. Maya, the ship's going down. But Maya wouldn't. She stumbled back toward the stairs leading below, even as water surged up to meet her. The ship groaned again, a death rattle. She had maybe 60 seconds before it went under completely. She found Hartwell in his cabin, unconscious, empty whiskey bottles rolling across the floor. No time for gentle. Maya grabbed him by the collar and dragged him out with strength she didn't know she had. The adrenaline, the fear, the absolute refusal to let anyone die on her watch, it all translated into raw power. Up the stairs. Water at her knees. At her waist. The ship tilting further. She reached the deck just as the Meridian Explorer gave its final lurch. Hands grabbed her, Jake and Sarah, pulling her and Hartwell into the last raft. They pushed away from the ship, just as it rolled completely onto its side. For a moment, they all just floated there, watching their vessels sink into the dark water, watching their supplies, their technology, their connection to the outside world disappear beneath the waves. Then someone pointed at the island. What is that place? Maya followed their gaze and felt ice replace her blood. There were buildings on that island. Old buildings, abandoned buildings, and something else, shapes moving in the shadows between the structures. Something that walked upright but didn't move like any animal she knew. The storm was still raging around them, pushing their tiny rafts toward the shore, toward the island, toward whatever was waiting there. And as lightning flashed across the sky, Maya saw something carved into the rocks near the shore. Words. A warning. They who enter never leave. The first raft hit the beach, and a scream pierced through the sound of the storm, a scream that cut off far too suddenly. What horrors await on the impossible island? Can Maya's ingenuity save them from whatever lurks in those abandoned buildings? And why does this place exist on no map? 21150 the island that swallowed ships. Ingenuity and struggle. The beach of broken dreams. The scream still echoed in Maya's ears as their raft scraped against black sand that looked more like crushed obsidian than any beach she'd ever seen. The storm continued its assault, but here, sheltered by the island's strange rock formations, the wind had diminished to angry gusts rather than the apocalyptic fury they'd just survived. Where's Brandon? Sarah's voice cracked with panic. He was in the first raft. Where is he? Maya counted heads again in the darkness, squinting through rain that felt oddly warm, almost oily. 11 people on the beach. The documentary filmmaker was missing, and his raft sat empty 20 feet away. Camera equipment scattered across the sand, still recording. The red light blinking like a mechanical heartbeat. Nobody wanted to say what they were all thinking. Nobody wanted to acknowledge the drag marks in the sand leading toward the tree line. Marks too wide to be human, with a pattern that suggested something with more than 2 legs. We need shelter. Maya forced herself to think past the fear, past the pain in her ribs and the 100 cuts covering her arms. That storm isn't done with us. We have maybe 30 minutes before the eye passes and the back end hits. Shelter? Here? Jake's face was white, his eyes fixed on those drag marks. Did you not see? Something took Brandon. Something took him. Which is why we need to get off this beach. Maya's voice had dropped to the tone her grandfather used when teaching her to navigate reefs. Calm, certain, allowing no argument. We're exposed here. Those buildings, she pointed toward the structures barely visible through the rain, they're our best option. The vote nobody wanted. Are you insane? One of the other scientists, Dr. Marcus Webb, stepped forward. He was older, distinguished, the kind of man used to being the smartest person in any room. We have no idea what's in those buildings. For all we know, that's where whatever took Brandon came from. Then we vote. Maya met his eyes. Everyone who wants to stay on this beach in the open, exposed to the storm and whatever else is out here, raise your hand. Silence. The only sound was the wind and waves and the distant rumble of thunder. Everyone who wants to find shelter, follow me. She didn't wait for a response. Maya grabbed a piece of driftwood, sharp, heavy enough to serve as a weapon, and started walking toward the structures. Behind her, she heard whispered arguments, but one by one, footsteps followed. Even Doc Webb, who muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, "When this goes wrong, remember who led us here." Maya didn't bother responding. She was too busy studying the buildings as they approached, her mind cataloging details that didn't make sense. The architecture was wrong. Not just old, ancient, but the style was confused, as if someone had taken elements from a dozen different cultures and time periods and smashed them together. Greek columns next to Asian pagoda roofing. Gothic arches beside what looked like Aztec stonework. And all of it covered in symbols that made her eyes hurt when she tried to focus on them. "This is impossible," she whispered. "What?" Sarah had stayed close beside her, the only one who seemed to trust Maya's instincts completely. These buildings, they shouldn't exist. Not together. Not here. Not. Maya stopped at the entrance to the largest structure. A massive doorway that stood open like a mouth waiting to swallow them. Inside, impossibly, there was light. The Library of Lost Ships. They entered cautiously, weapons raised, driftwood, a fire extinguisher someone had grabbed from the raft, a jagged piece of metal. What they found inside stopped them all in their tracks. Books. Thousands upon thousands of books lining shelves that stretched up into darkness. And not just books, journals, maps, navigation equipment, ship logs, all organized with meticulous care on tables and shelves, made from what looked like ship timber. "What the hell is this place?" Dr. Webb's voice had lost its condescension, replaced by genuine awe and fear. Maya moved deeper into the room, her oceanographer's brain struggling to process what she was seeing. She picked up the nearest journal, its leather cover water stained but intact. The date on the first page made her hands shake. 1847. This is from a whaling ship called the Cassandra's Dream. She looked around at the others. Does anyone else understand what this means? Their blank faces told her they didn't. Ships have been wrecking on this island for at least 177 years, maybe longer. Maya grabbed another journal. 1923, the SS Pacific Crown. Another one, 1889, Wanderer. Her voice rose with each discovery. This isn't just an unmapped island. This is a ship graveyard. This place has been pulling vessels here for centuries. But why isn't it on any maps? Sarah asked. Maya opened her mouth to answer, then froze. On the far wall, illuminated by the strange bioluminescent fungi growing between the stones, was a massive map. But it wasn't a map of the world they knew. It was a map of currents. Ocean currents that shouldn't exist, that formed a spiral pattern converging on this exact location. And in the center, written in multiple languages, some she recognized, some she'd never seen, was a single phrase repeated over and over. The convergence protects itself. The Guardian's warning. We're not alone. The voice came from the shadows at the back of the library, and 12 people spun around with weapons raised. An old man stepped into the fungal light, impossibly old, his skin like weathered leather, his eyes too bright, too aware. How long have you been there? Dr. Webb demanded. 73 years, give or take. The old man's smile revealed teeth too white, too perfect for someone his age. I was on the Eldridge when we crashed here. Well, part of it crashed here. The rest, he gestured vaguely. Elsewhere, Maya's mind raced. The Eldridge, she knew that name. The Philadelphia Experiment. The ship that supposedly vanished in 1943 during a naval experiment gone wrong. Most people thought it was a myth. That's impossible, she said. If you were on that ship, you'd be over 90 years old. I'm 103. The old man's smile widened. The island doesn't let you age normally, doesn't let you leave, either. But it keeps you alive. Oh yes, it keeps you very much alive, whether you want it to or not. A cold silence fell over the group. Jake broke it with a trembling question. What took our friend? The man on the beach? The old man's smile disappeared. The island did. Or rather, the thing that is the island. It needs to feed, you see. Every vessel that crashes here, it takes someone. Usually the first one to step on shore. A toll, if you will. A price for passage. Passage to where? Maya stepped forward. You said you can't leave. Can't leave alive through normal means. No. But there are other ways. Dangerous ways. Ways that require someone very clever, very brave, and very desperate. The old man studied Maya with those unsettling bright eyes. You're the one who steered the ship. You're the one who saved them all from being dashed on the rocks. You're the one they follow, even when they don't trust you. It wasn't a question. My name is Maya Chen. Who are you? I was Lieutenant James Rourke. Now I'm just the librarian. I catalog every ship, every crew, every failed escape attempt. I've watched hundreds of people arrive on this island over 7 decades. Do you know how many have successfully left? Maya waited. 3. 3 people in 73 years. And they didn't escape through strength or luck. He moved to a shelf and pulled down a journal bound in strange leather. They escaped through understanding. Through seeing the pattern, he handed the journal to Maya. The cover was warm, almost alive. Inside, the pages were filled with diagrams, mathematical equations, astronomical charts, and something else, a schematic that looked like a machine. What is this? Maya breathed. The only way off this island, the only way to break the convergence's hold. But it requires materials you don't have, knowledge you haven't learned, and time you're rapidly running out of. Rourke's expression grew grave. Because you see, the island doesn't just take one person. That's just the beginning. Every night, As long as the storm lasts, it takes another. And the storm, my dear, lasts as long as the island wants it to. Thunder crashed outside, as if emphasizing his point. How long? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. The last storm lasted 17 days. The one before that, 23. It depends on how many survivors there are, how much potential the island senses. Maya did the math. 12 of them now. If the island took one per night for even just 2 weeks, then we have to build this. She held up the journal. Whatever this machine is, we build it, and we get off this island. Dr. Webb laughed, a harsh, broken sound. With what? We have nothing. Our ship is at the bottom of the ocean. No, Maya's mind was already racing, the same way it had when she'd calculated the storm's approach, when she'd seen the ship's trajectory, when she'd made split-second decisions that had saved their lives. Our ship is down there, yes, but so are dozens of others. This island has been collecting wrecks for centuries. That means materials, that means parts, that means everything we need is here, we just have to find it. She turned to Rourke. How deep is the water around the island? Varies, 20 to 60 feet in most places. But Maya, his face grew even more serious. The water around this island isn't normal water, and the things that live in it aren't normal things. Every attempt to salvage from the wrecks has ended in death. Every single one. Then, we'll be the first to succeed. Maya looked around at her crew, at Jake, who was scared but listening, at Sarah, who'd proven her loyalty, at Dr. Webb, who despite his arrogance was brilliant, at the others, each with skills they'd need. We have engineers, biologists, scientists. We have brains, and we have desperation. That's more than most people had. You have 11 days, Rourke said quietly. Maybe 12 if the island is feeling generous. After that, there won't be enough of you left to operate the machine even if you build it. The device requires 7 people minimum, working in perfect synchronization. Lose more than 5, and you're all trapped here forever. The first night's price. A scream cut through the library, high-pitched, terrified, abruptly silenced. Everyone ran to the entrance. On the beach, where they'd left Hartwell to sleep off his drunkenness in one of the rafts, there was now only an empty raft and more of those impossibly wide drag marks. That's 2, Rourke said from behind them. The island is hungry tonight. I suggest you all stay inside, stay together, and start planning. Because tomorrow, you begin the most important work of your lives. You're going to attempt what only 3 people have ever accomplished. He handed Maya a stack of journals. These are the accounts of those who succeeded. And these, he added a much larger stack, are the accounts of those who failed. I suggest you read both. The failures will teach you what to avoid. The successes will teach you what you must become. Maya took the journals, felt their weight, both physical and metaphorical. Why are you helping us? She asked. Rourke's smile returned, sad this time, ancient with grief. Because I was the navigator on the Eldridge. I was the one who was supposed to get us home. And I failed. For 73 years, I've failed. Every crew that's arrived, I've watched them panic, fight, die, or go mad. But you... He looked at her with something like hope. You think like I used to think. You see patterns. You calculate odds. You don't give up. You said 3 people escaped. Why didn't you go with them? The old man's expression grew haunted. Someone has to stay. Someone has to maintain the library, to help the next crew, to keep the knowledge alive. Each person who escapes makes a choice, to leave or to stay and help. I chose to stay. He turned away, then paused. The machine you're about to build, it doesn't just require materials and knowledge. It requires sacrifice. Real sacrifice. One person has to stay behind to operate it, while the others escape. The final operator doesn't survive. I hope you're prepared to make that choice when the time comes." And with that, he disappeared back into the shadows of the library, leaving Maya holding the journals, surrounded by her frightened crew, listening to the storm rage outside, and something else, something huge and hungry, moving through the darkness between the buildings. 10 people left now. 10 people to build an impossible machine. 10 people to solve a mystery centuries old. And somewhere in those journals, buried in the accounts of the dead and the few who'd survived, was the answer. Maya opened the first journal and began to read. The race against time, tide, and terror had begun. Can Maya decipher the secrets in time? What horrors lurk in the underwater wrecks? And who among them will make the ultimate sacrifice? 3111-52 The Island That Swallowed Ships. Maya had read through the night, her eyes burning, her mind absorbing every detail from the journals of the dead and the escaped. By dawn, if you could call the sickly gray light filtering through the storm clouds dawn, she understood 3 critical things. First, the island wasn't really an island. It was a living organism, a convergence of electromagnetic anomalies, underwater volcanic activity, and something else. Something the journals called the consciousness. It fed on human fear, human despair, and ultimately, human life force. Second, the machine that could break its hold was built from salvaged ship parts, but specific parts arranged in a specific pattern that mimicked the inverse of the island's own electromagnetic signature. Build it correctly, and you could create a temporary hole in the convergence, a window of approximately 4 minutes to escape. Third, of the 3 people who'd successfully escaped, all had been considered disposable by their crews. The weak ones, the doubted ones, the underestimated ones. And all 3 had figured out what the brilliant, confident leaders had missed. The island feeds on arrogance, Maya whispered, understanding flooding through her. That's why the strong always fail. They try to dominate it, fight it, overcome it. But you can't fight a force of nature. You have to understand it, work with it, trick it. Sarah stirred beside her, having fallen asleep leaning against a shelf of ship logs. Did you find something? Everything. Maya stood, wincing at the pain in her ribs, definitely cracked, possibly broken. Wake the others. We're going diving. Dr. Webb, roused from his corner, immediately objected. Did you not hear what Rourke said? The water kills everyone who enters it. No. The water kills everyone who enters it afraid, desperate, and thrashing around like prey. Maya held up one of the journals. But 3 expeditions succeeded in salvaging materials. They all did the same thing. They went at high tide. They moved slowly, and they brought something the creatures down there wanted more than human flesh. Which is? Maya pulled out a jar she'd found in the library, filled with a luminescent paste made from the same fungi growing on the walls. Light. The things down there avoid light. They're deep-sea creatures, forced to the surface by the island's pull. They hate the brightness, but they're drawn to it like moths. If we smear this on decoy weights and drop them away from where we're diving, the creatures will go after those instead. That's insane, Dr. Webb said. That's survival, Maya countered. We have 9 people left. We need components from at least 3 different wrecks according to these diagrams. That means 3 dive teams, 3 trips, and we need to complete all of it before nightfall, because tonight the island will take someone else. She spread the journal pages across a table. Here's what we need. A ship's chronometer. Specifically, one calibrated for celestial navigation. There's one on the Humps Wanderer, 40 feet down, northeast side of the island. We need copper wiring, at least 60 feet of it, insulated. The SS Pacific Crown has that. She was a luxury liner, had electrical systems throughout. And we need the resonator core from our own ship, the Meridian Explorer. That's the newest tech and the most important piece. Jake studied the diagrams, his fear giving way to focus. I can dive. I was on my university's dive team. I've got rescue diver certification, Sarah added. One of the other scientists, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, raised her hand hesitantly. I did underwater archaeology in grad school. If we're going into wrecks, you'll want someone who knows how to navigate tight spaces without panicking. Maya nodded, hope building in her chest. Good. We have our teams. Jake, you're with me on the Meridian. It's the deepest and most dangerous. Sarah and Dr. Tanaka, you take the Wanderer. Dr. Webb. Absolutely not. I'm not going in that water. Fine. You're on the build team. You and the others start assembling what we already have based on these schematics. Maya fixed him with a hard stare. You want to survive? Then, everyone contributes. No passengers on this island. For the first time since they'd met, Dr. Webb didn't argue. Into the graveyard. 2 hours later, Maya stood on the black sand beach, wearing a makeshift diving rig assembled from life vests, rope, and salvaged equipment. The storm had lessened to a constant drizzle, but the water looked wrong. Too dark, too thick, like oil mixed with ink. Rourke appeared beside her, seeming to materialize from the rain itself. You understand what you're doing is suicide? Only if we fail. Maya secured her knife, a real blade she'd found in the library, not driftwood. You said 3 expeditions succeeded. That means it's possible. Those 3 had experienced divers. You have a junior oceanographer with broken ribs and a college athlete. Those 3 didn't have what I have. Maya met his ancient eyes. I have the pattern. I understand now. The island takes the ones who panic, the ones who see themselves as victims. But if you approach it like a problem to solve, like a current to navigate, like a storm to read, it becomes just another challenge. And I'm very good at challenges. She didn't wait for his response. Maya waded into the water and immediately understood why so many had died here. It wasn't just cold, it was wrong. The temperature shifted with each step, from freezing to blood warm to freezing again. The pressure felt off, as if the water itself was denser than it should be, and underneath, she felt something watching. Light, she reminded herself, and activated the bioluminescent paste she'd smeared on 3 weighted bags. Jake, beside her, threw them as far as he could in different directions. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the water erupted. The things below. They rose from the depths like nightmares given form. Creatures that were part octopus, part deep-sea fish, part something that had never existed in any ocean Maya had studied. Bioluminescent lures dangled from their heads, mouths full of needle teeth, tentacles that moved with horrible intelligence. But they didn't come for Maya and Jake. They swarmed the glowing bags, fighting over them in a frenzy of tentacles and teeth. Now, Maya dove, Jake right behind her. The water was murky, visibility less than 10 feet, but Maya had memorized the location from the journals. The Meridian Explorer lay on its side, the gash in its hull a dark mouth leading into its flooded interior. She'd spent 2 years on that ship. She knew every corridor, every room, every storage locker. The resonator core would be in the main lab, assuming the impact hadn't destroyed it. They swam through the wound in the ship's side, and Maya's light illuminated a scene of devastation. Equipment floated in the corridors, papers drifted like dead fish, and everywhere that sense of wrongness that permeated the water. Something moved in the shadows ahead. Maya froze, signaled to Jake. But it wasn't one of the creatures. It was Brandon, the documentary filmmaker. Or what was left of him. His body was suspended in the water, eyes open but vacant, skin pale and bloated. But he was moving, animated by something else, pulled like a puppet by thin, almost invisible filaments that extended from the walls themselves. The island, Maya realized with horror. The island was in the ship now. It was in the water. It was trying to incorporate everything, make it all part of itself. She forced herself to move past Brandon's corpse, past the horror, past the fear. The lab was just ahead. The door was jammed, but Maya had expected that. She'd brought a pry bar from the library. Jake helped her lever it open, and they slipped inside. The resonator core sat in its housing, miraculously intact. But as Maya reached for it, the filaments in the water began to move toward them, drawn by their body heat, their living energy. Jake, the core. Now, together they yanked it free from its moorings. The device was the size of a basketball, heavy, awkward underwater. But they had it. Maya signaled up, and they kicked for the exit. The filaments lunged. Maya slashed with her knife, and incredibly, they recoiled. The blade, old steel from the library, forged in some pre-industrial process. The island couldn't absorb it, couldn't touch it. She slashed again, creating a path, and they burst from the ship's corpse into open water. The creatures were still distracted by the glowing bags, but wouldn't be for long. Maya and Jake surfaced, gasping, and hands reached down to pull them and the resonator core onto the beach. They'd done it. The first piece. The race against darkness. By noon, Sarah and Dr. Tanaka returned with the chronometer, though Sarah was bleeding from a dozen cuts where the Wanderer's sharp, corroded metal had torn her wetsuit. By mid-afternoon, Dr. Webb's team had salvaged copper wiring from the Pacific Crown, though they'd lost one of the interns, a girl named Rebecca, to something that had been waiting in the luxury liner's flooded ballroom. The water had exploded upward. Something pale and massive had breached like a whale, and Rebecca was simply gone. 8 people left. As the light faded and the rain intensified, they worked with desperate speed in the library, assembling the machine according to the schematics. It looked like something from a mad scientist's fever dream, a circular frame made from ship's wheels, wound with copper wire in precise geometric patterns, with the chronometer at its heart and the resonator core mounted at specific points along the circumference. "It's a giant compass," Jake said suddenly. "Or no, an anti-compass. It points away from the island instead of toward it." Exactly. Maya was making final adjustments, her hands steady despite exhaustion and pain. The island creates a convergence, a whirlpool in reality. This device creates a divergence, a straight line out. But only for 4 minutes, and only if we activate it at exactly the right moment. "Which is?" Dr. Webb asked. Maya consulted the chronometer, cross-referenced it with the astronomical charts from the journals. "Tonight, high tide, when the 3 moons align." 3 moons? Sarah looked confused. Earth only has 1 moon. Earth does. But whatever pocket of reality this island exists in has 3. I saw them last night through the clouds. The journals mention them. They're the key to the timing. When all 3 are visible at their zenith, that's when the island's hold is weakest. "That's our window." Rourke appeared from the shadows. "You've done well. Better than most. But you understand the final requirement, yes? The machine needs 7 people to operate it, but 1 must stay at the center, maintaining the resonance until the others escape. That person dies." I know. Maya had read that part a dozen times. The energy feedback incinerates whoever's at the center. That's the price. Silence fell over the group. Outside, something howled. A sound that was part wind, part animal, part the grinding of tectonic plates. "Tonight the island will come for another," Rourke continued. "It knows what you're building. It's angry, desperate. It will try to stop you, and if you're not in position when the moons align, you'll lose your chance. The next alignment isn't for 6 months. Then we move the machine to the beach now." Maya grabbed one side of the device. Everyone who can walk, carry. We set up, we wait, and when those moons appear, we activate. The island's fury. The journey from library to beach should have taken 10 minutes. It took 2 hours. The island fought them every step. The paths changed, turning back on themselves. Trees that hadn't been there before sprouted from the ground, roots reaching like fingers. The rain turned to hail, then to something that burned when it touched skin. And the creatures came, not just the water dwellers, but things from the jungle, from the rocks, from the buildings themselves. Animated corpses of previous crews, pulled like marionettes by those impossible filaments. Brandon was among them, and Hartwell and Rebecca, their mouths opening and closing in silent screams. Maya led her people through it all, navigating by instinct and the compass in her mind, the one that had always pointed toward survival. When Dr. Tanaka fell, twisted her ankle in a suddenly appearing crevasse, Maya hauled her up. When the copper wiring threatened to unspool in the wind, Jake and Sarah secured it. When Dr. Webb started to panic, saying they should go back, Maya simply said, "There is no back, only forward." They reached the beach as the clouds parted, and 3 moons, one silver, one amber, one the color of old bone, began their rise into the sky. Positions. Maya shouted over the wind. 7 points around the circle. Each of you holds a node and doesn't let go no matter what. They scrambled into place. Sarah, Jake, Dr. Webb, Dr. Tanaka, and the 3 remaining crew members whose names Maya suddenly couldn't remember. Exhaustion and pain blurring her thoughts. 7 around the circle, and 1 to stand at the center. Maya, no. Sarah realized it first. You can't. You're the one who figured this out. You're the one who should escape. I'm the navigator. Maya stepped toward the center, toward the resonator core that would have to be manually activated and held. It's always been my job to get you all home. This is just the final course correction, please. Sarah was crying now. There has to be another way. But there wasn't, and they both knew it. Maya positioned herself at the center, hands on the resonator core. Above, the 3 moons climbed higher, converging toward their zenith. She could feel the island's rage building, could sense something massive moving beneath the beach, beneath the water, something vast and ancient and furious that a mere human had solved its puzzle. When I activate this, Maya said, her voice steady, you'll have 4 minutes. There will be a path across the water, you'll see it, like a bridge of light. Run. Don't look back. Don't stop. Get to the other side and you'll be out of the convergence, back in normal space. A ship will find you. How do you know? Jake asked. Because that's what the journals said. Every time. The path leads to safety. You just have to trust it. The moons reached their zenith. Maya activated the resonator core, the bridge of light. The device exploded with brilliance, and the island screamed. It wasn't a sound. It was a feeling, a psychic howl of fury and loss. The filaments burst from the ground, from the water, from everywhere, reaching for the humans who dared to escape its grasp. But the light held them back, and across the water, just as Maya had promised, a bridge appeared, a shimmering path of coherent energy, stable and solid, leading away into the distance. Go. Maya shouted, and they ran. She watched them sprint across the impossible bridge, watched Sarah look back once with tears streaming down her face, watched Jake stumble but keep going, watched Dr. Webb, proud, arrogant Dr. Webb, mouth the words thank you before disappearing into the light. 7 people running toward life. 1 person holding the gate open. The resonator core was burning her hands now, the energy feedback building. Maya could feel it cooking her from the inside out, but she held on. 4 minutes. That's all they needed. The island threw everything at her. The corpse puppets lunged, but couldn't cross the circle of light. The water creatures erupted from the surf, but were vaporized by the energy field. The very ground beneath her feet buckled and heaved, but the machine held. 3 minutes. Maya's vision was blurring, her nerves screaming. She thought of her grandfather, teaching her to read the storms. She thought of every person who doubted her, every time she'd been called sweetie or junior or treated like she couldn't possibly understand. She'd understood perfectly. 2 minutes. The last of her crew disappeared into the distance. Safe. Gone. Free. Maya smiled through the pain. She'd done it. She'd navigated them through the impossible storm, through the island that swallowed ships, through the convergence that trapped souls for centuries. 1 minute. Thank you, Rourke's voice whispered from somewhere nearby. You've saved 7 souls. That's more than most. More than I ever did. Someone had to stay, Maya whispered back, echoing his words from before. Yes. Someone always does. But Maya, you should know something. The island keeps the brave. It keeps the clever. It keeps those who understand it. You won't die here. You'll become, like me, a guardian, a guide. No. Maya's voice was stronger than it should have been. I figured that out too. From the journals, the 3 who escaped didn't just trick the island. They taught it something. They showed it that humans are more valuable as inspiration than as food. That our stories, our knowledge, our solutions, those are worth more than our fear. The 4 minutes were up. The energy feedback reached its crescendo. But Maya had one more trick, one final navigation to make. With the last of her strength, she redirected the energy, not into herself, but into the ground, into the island itself, into the very consciousness that had trapped so many. Learn, she whispered. Evolve. Become something better. The light exploded. 6 months later, the Coast Guard cutter Steadfast approached the coordinates where 7 survivors had been found floating in a life raft, babbling about an impossible island and a woman who'd saved them all. Satellite imagery showed nothing at that location. Sonar showed normal ocean floor. But the survivors had been consistent in their stories. And one of them, a Dr. Sarah Chen, who'd insisted on taking her rescuer's surname, had demanded they return. There's nothing here, the captain said. But Sarah stared at the empty ocean and smiled. Yes, there is. She made sure of it. That night, as the Steadfast prepared to return to port, a young ensign noticed something odd on the radar. A brief blip, there and gone, like an island that didn't exist appearing for just a moment. And on a beach that wasn't there, in a library full of impossible journals, an old man named Rourke opened a new volume and began to write. Her name was Maya Chen. She was 29 years old. She was the navigator who found the pattern, solved the puzzle, and taught the island that humanity's greatest strength isn't dominance or arrogance. It's the quiet determination to help others survive, even when survival seems impossible. She didn't die here. She transcended. And now her consciousness guides the currents, pushes ships away from danger, and whispers to navigators when storms approach. Some call her a legend. I call her a friend. And every vessel that should have crashed here but mysteriously didn't, every crew that found safe harbor in impossible weather, every navigator who just knew which way to steer, they all carry a piece of her gift. The island no longer hungers. It protects. Because one underestimated woman showed it a better way to exist. Rourke closed the journal and placed it on the shelf next to all the others, the failures and the successes, the lost and the saved. And somewhere in the quantum foam of reality, in the space between normal and impossible, Maya Chen's consciousness smiled. She'd navigated them home. All of them. Even herself.